Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. My name is Spike, and in today's video we're going to talk about aluminium profile sim rigs, and most importantly, are they worth the investment if you are a sim racing enthusiast? So you might be on a desk mounted wheel setup already, or have a cheaper kind of tubular rig for instance, and you might be thinking about upgrading to a profile rig like we see on the screen here. So this is what I've got. This is the SimLab GT1 Evo sim racing cockpit, and I have to say I'm really impressed with it so far. I've been really enjoying using it, and I figured now would be a good time to kind of talk a bit about it and what it is I like about it. So with the help of some hastily written notes and some B-roll, I'm going to talk about what I upgraded from, why I decided I needed to upgrade, and whether or not I'm enjoying this cockpit and whether I think it was worth it. So if you're having some of the same kind of issues I was having with my old setup, then maybe this might help you make a decision on whether or not to take the leap of faith and get yourself one of these setups. I started out with a very basic desk setup. I had a Thrustmaster TX mounted to a desk. I then moved house and had it mounted to a different desk in a kind of cleaner setup. So I was really enjoying my Forza on my humble desk setup, and I decided to take a leap of faith and get myself an ultimate sim racing cockpit, which was like an entry-level tubular cockpit with an integrated monitor mount and a chair and stuff came with it. So it was a basically all-in-one package, and I got that last summer, and I specifically remember setting it up at my sister's house. I was staying there for a week while they were on holiday, and I had a whole week of just driving against AI on Forza in my new cockpit, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was brilliant. You could say I was hooked on the whole kind of sim racing thing at that point. I think that was the moment where it kind of clicked that this was something that I really enjoyed. And I think during that week I really got hooked on sim racing as a hobby, and I know some of you might laugh at that because it's Forza and that's, some people don't really view that as sim racing, but I was enjoying myself. It was a good time. So I really liked that cockpit. It got me started with the channel, it got me started with the whole sim racing thing. However, it had some shortcomings, and I'll talk through those now using my hastily written list. So to start with, it was creaky. It was a bit kind of creaky in terms of like the frame of it creaked, the pedal tray, the chair, and it didn't really matter how much I tightened it with its Allen key. It felt like it always had an area that was kind of metal on metal rubbing, generating a not so pleasant creak, which you could kind of not just hear but also feel through the hardware, like the wheel and the pedals. You could, and mainly the chair. So it had some like creakiness and some flex going on, and I think that was just down to the quality of the hardware that they'd sent. So it was creaky. Since buying that rig, I've moved into a different place. I'm now in an upstairs flat, so I've got neighbours downstairs who don't want to have a creaky metal mass kind of moving above their head, especially when Race Club UK events are fairly late on a Tuesday evening. They don't really want to hear that late into the night. So it was creaky and noisy. I could feel kind of the creaking through the actual cockpit itself, and it sometimes translated, you know, through the pedals and through the wheel, but mostly it was the chair that was the problem, and the pedal tray, and not just the creaking, but the amount of flex. It felt like when I was braking hard, the seat moved backwards rather than the pedal being compressed. It felt like my body was moving backwards. So I found that a bit of a problem, especially when I upgraded to a load cell pedal. That became a real issue then, and it was really difficult to kind of work on my braking technique in sims like ACC. So that was one issue with it I found. So aside from the creakiness and the flex, the other problem was that the chair itself was really uncomfortable. It felt very cheap. It felt like it was out of the back of the Argos catalogue, if that's still a thing. It might just be electronic now, but the chair itself was really cheap and like horrible. It was really uncomfortable. And as I progressed from Forza to longer races and league racing in ACC with Race Club UK, I was getting to the end of races and I felt really sore, felt really uncomfortable. My back and my legs were hurting, and I think it was just like a lack of padding in the chair and the fact that it wasn't set up in a way to support my lower back specifically. So the chair itself was a big problem, and that was one of the main reasons I decided to upgrade. It also wasn't very good in terms of adjustability, and I felt like my knees were always making contact with the bottom of the wheelbase as I was reaching for the pedals. So that was a bit of a problem. And then also the monitor mount felt like it was a bit too far back from where the wheelbase was, so it kind of felt a bit too far away. It was a bit of a strange disconnect. There wasn't really much I could do in terms of fine adjustments to alleviate or to resolve those issues. So that was a smaller reason, but still contributed to my decision to upgrade to a profile rig. So those are my main kind of bugbears with it. I really liked it as a cockpit. I'm glad it got me into the hobby, but I think if I could turn back time, I'd have just skipped that cockpit altogether, because it was, I think it was like £300, so it wasn't cheap. And you can see here that this is $350. You know, for not a huge amount of extra money, you could get way better quality in terms of the product that you're using. This is the cockpit that I went for, the aforementioned GT1 Evo sim racing cockpit from SimLab. Came with an integrated monitor stand. I went for this variant. I can't remember how much it was at the time, but it's currently listed for £446. And you can see here we've got the cockpit itself and then the added on monitor stand. This is what it looks like without, if you've already got a monitor stand, and then this is what it's like with. I was used to having the monitor mount, so that's why I went for that as an addition. I also got myself the shifting plate and a cup holder, because I felt like whenever I was racing I didn't have a place to put a drink. It was always like on the floor next to me or somewhere difficult to reach or at risk of being spilled on something expensive. So I came home from work one day to find it in my porch ready to be brought in and assembled, and I brought it into my back room where I have my setup, got it all unboxed. Initially it was pretty overwhelming seeing all the pieces, because there was like loads of different nuts and bolts and washers, and obviously then the bits of aluminium themselves and the pedal tray. And obviously I'd not put one of these together before, so I was looking at it thinking like, I'm never going to be able to get this together. But I chipped away at it. I used kind of evenings and kind of late into the night being as quiet as I could to not wake up the neighbours downstairs, and I got it together. So the seat's from an old Volkswagen. It was £20 off Facebook Marketplace. I'm not sure if it was a Golf or a Caddy. It might have been a Caddy because it has an under-seat drawer, and I'm not sure if that's common on like Polos or Golfs, but it was 20 quid, it was super cheap, and the guy dropped it off at my flat. I actually bought it with the hope of mounting it to my previous rig, and then realised that because of the width of my previous rig, it wasn't actually going to be very easy, and I think the end result would have been a bit shit. So I decided to scratch that idea and just get a proper profile rig that I could mount this seat to properly. I was a bit worried about how difficult the seat would be to mount onto here, because car seats come with a pin on the underside of the rail, and I think that's used in the factory to kind of centre the car seat, or maybe it's like a safety thing, I'm not really sure, but there's a pin on the underside of the rail, and I had to buy a saw off Amazon, like a special like metal saw, to cut that off. But actually that turned into a 5-minute job, and then after that, despite it being bulky and a bit awkward to move, getting the seat on was fairly straightforward, and it just took a bit of kind of finesse to get it to sit central in the cockpit itself. So that wasn't too much of a big problem. So I was very pleased with how it looked once I got it all set up and assembled, but mostly I was taken aback by how much more comfortable it was versus the old Sim. And even just initially sitting in it, I was immediately struck by how much more comfortable it was. And now I've used it for a couple of months and done some longer practice sessions and longer races. It's so much more comfortable to use for longer periods of time, and I'm just, I feel vindicated that I actually can sit in my seat and not feel sore and uncomfortable, and I can enjoy just focusing on the driving. The quality of the hardware is also really high, so not just the aluminium and the finish, the powder coating, but also the smaller things like the nuts and the bolts, the stuff that holds it together, and that is so important. And I think SimLab specifically have done a really good job of providing high quality hardware for this cockpit. It feels really robust, and where I was struggling before with flex and the pedal tray and the chair, I now don't have that issue at all. The chair doesn't move, the pedal tray doesn't move. The only place where there's a bit of flex is on the wheel deck itself, and I think part of that is due to the actual build of my Thrustmaster base. It's not got the best mounting points on it, but then I still think there's a tiny little bit of flex in there, but nothing that I can notice when I'm actually using it. So yeah, flex under braking and kind of creaky noises is no longer a problem, which is great. That was one of the things that I wanted to sort out. Additionally, the level of adjustability here is now almost infinite. I can move the wheelbase up, I can move it down, I can move the monitor back, I can set it at an angle. The monitor mount itself comes with micro adjustments, so I can really finely tweak it, and I think it's a bit overkill. It's probably designed for triples and tuning those in so they're all aligned properly, but it's nice to have that level of adjustability if I want it. But yeah, things like the pedal tray can move and be angled, the wheelbase can be moved and angled, and most importantly the seat itself is way more adjustable. And I guess the old one had some adjustable qualities, but the problem with that was because it was so cheaply put together, those things kind of moved as you're using it. They weren't very sturdy, so it felt like it was like, as I've said, it kind of flexed and bent a lot, whereas with this I don't have any of that at all. I've got runners to move it forwards and backwards and lock it in. I've got the ability to tilt it forwards and backwards. Because it's a driver's seat as well, it has a lever to kind of elevate it and to move it downwards. So I've got 3 ways I can adjust the seat, 4 ways if you include kind of adjusting the headrest as well. Obviously it's a real car seat, so it's way more comfortable and way better than what I had before. I suppose the last major draw of this sort of setup is the future proofing. Because it's aluminium profile, it's built to a standardized measurement, which means that there's lots of aftermarket parts and room for things to be added on at later points. So for example, I might add on like a second monitor mount at some point, maybe above the monitor I've got on currently. But things like phone mounts, cup holders, button boxes are all things that you can add on as and when you add them to your setup. So for future proofing, this is definitely a better route to go down. As with anything, there are drawbacks. The first thing that springs to mind for me is the weight of it. It's really heavy and awkward to move, and I didn't get casters to put it on to roll it around so I could get behind it and clean it easy. So that's one thing to consider. It is really heavy and awkward to move, so maybe if you're going to get one, I'd advise building it with the casters, because disassembling it later to put them on is going to be difficult, because obviously they're on the underside, so it's a difficult spot to get to. Not impossible, but definitely more difficult if you're trying to add them on to a rig that's already built. So just something to consider. Secondly, the specific model I went for didn't have a upright support for the shifter arm. If I bring you back onto the browser here, you can see that the shifter arm here doesn't have an upright support, which means that it kind of wobbled around. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a profile rig, so I was able just to measure the gap from here to here and find a piece of profile online that kind of fit that gap to give it that upright support that just makes it a bit more stable and sturdy when I'm using a H pattern shifter. So again, it's annoying that it doesn't come with it. I think GT Omega does a sim rig in this price bracket that does have that support. It's interesting that they decided not to put that on this one, but again, it's a profile rig, easy to find the piece and put that in. It also didn't come with any cable management solutions, so I think I went onto Etsy or like AliExpress or something and got some 3D printed loops that kind of clip onto the profile that you can route cables through. But my old rig came with some cable management clips included. Yeah, again, just a SimLab thing. I'm not sure if it'd be the same for other brands, but it'd be nice if they'd included some of those off the bat, because everyone's going to have cables running all over this thing. And the last thing for me, I'm a UK customer, so I was stung with EU import tariffs. I'm not sure where SimLab are based, but just something to be aware of for UK customers. You don't want to get stung by sovereignty, apparently. All in all though, I'm really happy with how this setup has turned out. It's way better than what I had before. It's way more comfortable to use for longer periods of time. There's less flex, less noise, less creaking, less irritation for me and for my neighbours downstairs. And as I said before, it feels like it's built from very high quality materials. It feels like it's built to last, it's robust and it's strong, so quite happy with it from that point of view. Lastly, it's way better in terms of its adjustability and customizability, and it's future proofed in the sense that I can go and add bits to it and upgrade it as and when I feel like it's necessary. So yeah, happy with it from that point of view as well. I think that more or less covers everything that I wanted to cover in this one. For me, this was a brilliant investment. I wish I'd done this sooner. It might not be the same for you, but if you've got some of the same issues that I've maybe discussed in this video, then maybe this is something for you to consider. Otherwise, I'm going to leave this one here for today. If you enjoyed the video, then do consider subscribing to the channel. Any support is greatly appreciated. I think I'm currently 1 subscriber away from 150 as well, so if you get me over that line, that would be greatly appreciated. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day, drink lots of water during the heat wave, and I shall see you in the next one.